Wonderful. Okay, welcome to the April morning briefing hosted by the Mount Vernon Lee Chamber of Commerce. I am Allison Ross Tompkins, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Mount Vernon Lee Chamber. I'm also the Director of Sales and Marketing at the Fairfax Retirement Community. We are located just 1 mile south of the Tully entrance of Fort Belvoir on Route 1. And now that I have everyone's attention, today is tax day. I hope everyone remembered. Saturday, we are hosting a shredding day at the Fairfax. So for those who would like to get rid of those old tax forms, anything that you have collected over the 7 years, or 8 years, I should say, anything you can get rid of, we're willing to shred for you. So that will happen this Saturday, April 17, from 9 to noon. It's a drive-through event. So you're all welcome to bring your papers, anything you would like to have shredded, drive through and take off for the rest of the day. Okay, it's an honor to welcome our guest, the Garrison Commander of Fort Belvoir, Colonel Joshua Seagraves. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, Colonel Seagraves. We will be introducing you a little bit later in this presentation, but just wanted to thank you. So as we begin, I'd like to recognize the Chamber's strategic partners. These are businesses that support the Chamber on a higher level, and we appreciate their contribution to our success. Those participating in the meeting today are Joel Bernstein, ECCA Payroll. Thank you, Joel. Alex Rhodes, Fort Belvoir Residential Communities. Thank you, Alex. Dan Rinzel, Redmond, Peyton, and Braswell in Old Town. Thank you, Dan. And then myself at the Fairfax. Have I missed any strategic partners who have joined us today?
And Don Camerata.
Oh, thank you, Don. Appreciate your speaking up.
And Allison, I think we have Colonel Jorgensen from the Army Residence Foundation with us also.
Thank you, Holly. Colonel Jorgensen, thank you for joining us this morning. It really is a pleasure and an honor to have you this morning, sir. I'd also like to recognize the Chamber Chairman, Mark Murray. Mark is the owner of Fort Belvoir Swim Team. Good to see you today, Mark.
Thank you, Allison.
I'd also like to welcome our friends from Fort Belvoir, along with Rachel Flynn, the Deputy County Executive, Vance Zavella, Fairfax County Liaison to Fort Belvoir. And today's meeting is sponsored by Cox Communications. Kevin McNulty, the Government Affairs Manager at Cox, will share a few thoughts with us this morning. Kevin.
Thank you, Allison. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Cox Communications, a proud provider of telecommunications services to Fort Belvoir, it is my privilege to introduce Colonel Joshua Seagraves, Garrison Commander of Fort Belvoir. Colonel Seagraves was commissioned in the infantry from the University of Texas, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Criminology and Criminal Justice. Colonel Seagraves has a Master of Science in the Management of Information Technology from the University of Virginia and a Master of Strategic Studies from the Marine Corps War College. He's also a graduate of the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. Colonel Seagraves served in Ranger, Airborne, and Light Infantry formations and has comprehensive experience in both conventional and special operations commands. His command assignments include multiple combat tours across the CENTCOM and AFRICOM AORs. Please join me in giving a virtual welcome to Colonel Joshua Seagraves.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate the intro there. Totally unnecessary, but thanks. I greatly appreciate it. Wow, this is a great opportunity for me. I've tried, just to put this into context a little bit, I've tried to kind of focus on the Garrison when I first took over, and then have, because of COVID, been a little bit limited in spreading out, but to the surrounding community. So some of those engagements have been limited. So I greatly appreciate the opportunity today to address the chamber. So I'm Josh Seagraves, the Garrison Commander, and I've been in position since August of 2020. And thank you to Holly and Allison and the chamber members for giving me this chance to share information and updates about Fort Belvoir with our local business leaders and neighbors rather in the Mount Vernon community. So on Fort Belvoir, we have about 145 partners on properties throughout the region, including Springfield, Alexandria, Tyson's Corner, and Charlottesville, as well as Suitland, Maryland. So widespread. Our most recent workforce numbers include a population of about 9,000 military, 19,000 federal civilians, and 13,000 contracted employees. Our total economic impact across the region is estimated at nearly $15 billion. And although many of our partners are teleworking, we are still able to provide essential and emergency services across Fort Belvoir and the surrounding area. We also serve more than 200,000 in the area, and that includes service members, retirees, civilian employees, and family members. In conjunction with the hospital, the Fort Belvoir Community Hospital, we're committed and focused on getting shots in the arms, so to speak, of our workforce members who are eligible for the vaccine in accordance with local and state guidelines and health authorities. And I'm sure, as many of you heard yesterday and have been hearing on the news, the shots are now open to ages 16 and up. So, basically everyone in those age groups are eligible at this time. As more of us slowly return to work and our daily traffic numbers consistently increase, we plan to eventually open up Lieber Gate. So that's on Route 1 across from the Belvoir Hospital. Our traffic numbers over the last 8 months have been significantly increased. We typically have about 60,000 cars coming through the gate, and during COVID, we've been hovering between 18 and 25,000 on a peak day. We also expect to reopen Walker Gate on the Mount Vernon Memorial Highway this summer. There's a bridge that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is working on, and obviously due to supply line delays, they've had some delays in building material, but they are working on the reconstruction. And then coincidentally, we just worked a communication line. I'm not 100% sure that was a Cox line, but I think that it could have been that they were working to reroute for the Belvoir and for that bridge construction. When that gate reopens, the Walker Gate, left turns in the Walker Gate will probably be easier for many of the residents of Mount Vernon, both motorists and commuters. So that'll be good. Everybody's looking forward to that one reopening. The area then will also be safer for pedestrians and cyclists, and trail improvements near Fort Belvoir should enhance the entire recreation for our community. Our new fire training center, it's adjacent to the Fairfax County Parkway, opened last summer. It's a 3-story facility that adds to the region's safety and exemplifies the cooperation between Fort Belvoir, Fairfax County, and our regional and federal partners. You may also know that the privatized housing at the Department of Defense locations have had some ongoing issues, even before the pandemic hit. We were addressing them individually and continue to address them. That has the Army's attention. There's been some media releases on that recently at the Army senior leader level. And so on Fort Belvoir, just in addition to all the efforts that we're doing to provide safe and secure housing for our members, we also started a mayor's program in each of our residential neighborhoods. There are 15 of those neighborhoods on Fort Belvoir, and we've increased the number of inspections and quality assurance measures, including COVID safeguards, that ensure that our residents' needs are met in housing. So those inspections include industrial hygienists, quality control, and quality assurance, and they're all separate. So they provide separate looks at work orders and repairs. And most recently, we've started a pilot program for the Army that will eventually be Army-wide, that is an independent contracting company doing home inspections. So we're hopeful that both building trust and confidence in our residents and improving the overall quality of the housing. There's also across the Department of Defense Residents' Bill of Rights that the privatized housing uses as a measure of improvement and success. The next thing I'd like to talk about for just a minute is the National Museum of the United States Army. Obviously, we're very excited about that. And it had a virtual opening in November. That's on the Fairfax County Parkway. Yeah, perfect timing, right? Speaking of fire and emergency services. So although the museum's only open virtually, the museum does showcase the Army's role in defending our nations through its displays and experiences. And that's free. They're doing an online ticketing system. So whenever that reopens, I would encourage everybody to go there. Obviously adhere to the COVID guidelines, but it is really a incredibly well done space, very well done, and really a unique display of our service, of the Army's service to our nation over the last 200 plus years. It'll be open for large groups eventually, and private events as well. So I again encourage everybody to do that when you're available to, and when it's open. And so finally, just like to thank Holly and the Chamber for including Fort Belvoir today. We hope to continue the partnerships that we have long into the future, and absolutely value the relationship that we have with our neighbors. This command in Fort Belvoir, you know, it's like not about me, it's not about the Sergeant Major, it's about the garrison, it's about the relationships, and it's about the surrounding community. So we greatly appreciate your support of the Fort Belvoir community, and we're extremely proud to call Fairfax County our home. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Seagraves. We'd like to open it up now to some questions for Colonel Seagraves. Does anybody have a question they'd like to throw out to him?
Good morning. It's Vance Savella, the liaison of Fort Belvoir. Colonel Seagraves, thank you very much for joining us today. Do you happen to have a timeline on the Army Museum in terms of the in-person opening?
Sir, that's a great question. So I think that as we get people more vaccinated and you know, we start to reduce restrictions, obviously the local jurisdictions are going to outpace the military, and certainly Secretary Austin has provided us very direct, you know, mitigation measures that we're due to follow. So the opening of the museum in person resides at the Army senior leader level, so the director of the Army staff, and then the Center for Military History. They own that. I know that they had a meeting last week with the stakeholders to try to figure out exactly when they're going to do that, and I didn't get an out brief on it. So that's a very long way around of, I don't know exactly, but I do expect it to be, so I think it will be soon. I just don't know exactly when. You can get the tickets and scheduling online though, whenever it comes available.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Vance Savella. Anyone else have a question? If you do have a question, put your mouse at the bottom of the screen and you'll see an area that says chat. We can read that question if you don't feel like reading it. We're happy to do that. Just type your question into the chat area and we will have Colonel Seagraves answer that question. Otherwise, please feel free to speak up at this time.
So, Allison, could I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So, Colonel Seagraves, this is Holly Doherty, and I am wondering, for those who may be newer to the area, if you could give an overview of the different commands that are on Fort Belvoir that kind of give a idea of the breadth of services that you provide there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So obviously you have the garrison, and then we've got the Reserve Scales Center. So a large contingent of reserve units. Our biggest one is the Sustainment Brigade. So they do logistics for the area, or logistics for the Army rather. There is the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. the Fort Belvoir Community Hospital, along with the Regional Health Command Atlantic. And they're responsible for things like not just Fort Belvoir, but they have a clinic in Fairfax, and then they also are responsible for the Pentagon Clinic. We have a headquarters battalion, so they run all the sort of admin and logistics for the garrison, including an military police detachment that's responsible with our Department of Emergency Services folks for emergency services on the installation. We have the everybody's heard of the night vision lab. So there's some science and technology folks that we have on Fort Belvoir that are a large contingent there. We've got a transportation detachment, and so they do some work in the waterways, but they also do work with transportation in the area. So some logistics, but mostly transportation for the Army. We have a protective services battalion, so that's a larger security battalion that we have. And then a couple of others are things like our religious support office, certainly the legal support office that we have. And then we've got a satellite campus of the Command and General Staff College as well. So those are just to name a few. So the breadth and depth is really, really broad for Fort Belvoir, and we find strength in that diversity on Fort Belvoir. So the partners are really the strength, and it brings all kinds of different flavors of Army personnel, but also Fort Belvoir is 77% joint. So at places like the hospital and the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, we've got Coast Guards, men and women, Navy, sailors, airmen from the Air Force, and then Marines as well, just to name a few.
That was a great question, Holly. Thank you, Colonel Seagraves. I have a question for you, if I may. So I appreciate the fact that you value the local relationships, as we do as well at the Fairfax retirement community. We so much value our relationship with Fort Belvoir, and especially with the Fort Belvoir Hospital. So thank you for raising the hospital as an area of focus. Can you speak to the future as you know it today? And I hate to put you on the spot, but here you are. So the Fairfax has over 500 residents living at our community, largely retired military, retired government as well, and so forth. Will there be, or is there some discussion now about continuing the executive medical program, the executive suite at Fort Belvoir Hospital?
So that is a really good question, and I'm going to have to defer to Captain Judy on that, to the hospital commander. So I'm going to have to get an email from you and send you an answer on it from her. That's an important program. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I think the answer is yes, but I want to check with Captain Judy first, because she's a real expert on
Yes,
that
sir.
program.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. If you were, could you send Michelle, my EA may have a good contact information for you. I'd be glad to follow up.
Yes, sir. That would be great.
Thank you.
Holly, do you see any questions in there in the chat area?
I do. Kelly Catherine has put this in. She said, for hotelers on the call, government travel has been essential in our return to normalcy. We're seeing a small uptick in essential travel, but is there any timeline on when we can expect incoming travel to return to peak numbers?
Do you mean government travel, or like recreational travel?
Government for the most part.
Yeah, so boy, we've taken some significant budget budget cuts this year. I think, it's not anyone's fault in particular. It's just kind of a thing that typically happens when you have a change of administration, and that's totally fine, right? Like the DoD just continues to operate. One of the pieces of guidance that we got was that we've reduced basically all of our official travel. So we're not, I don't think we're going to see a lot of official travel unless it's absolutely essential, which is really, really minimal, particularly for the Garrison. But I think it's going to be minimal for the rest of DoD as well. I don't know specifically what the other commanders have received guidance on, but that's the guidance we've received at the Garrison.
Understood. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So if I could just follow up on that, Colonel, how do you define essential travel? What does that mean?
Sure. So recently we've before the pandemic, we hired on a anti-terrorism officer, for example, or a force protection officer. And part of his training, part of his job requires some specific training that he has to get at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And so his travel was approved. It's a 2-week course. Really, the cost was pretty minimal in terms of travel, but he had to, so because it was part of his job, because he had to get the training to be able to do his job, that travel was approved. But any other sort of temporary duty kind of travel is probably not going to be approved unless it's required for an individual to do their job or to maintain a specific qualification, like some kind of a emergency services qualification, for example.
Colonel Seagraves, you talked a little bit about some of the gates. The Lieber Gate, as you get more traffic, you'll be reopening the Lieber Gate. The Tolla Gate's open right now. The Walker Gate will open this summer. Can you talk to us about the Beulah Gate? That's been closed. What are your plans to reopen that? I know that's important for a lot of our businesses in the Kingstown, the Hilltop Village Center, for people to have access to those businesses.
Yeah. So right now we haven't talked about that gate being open. And in fact, I haven't had stats on that gate in a while, and we haven't really had a demand signal, although I acknowledge it is convenient for Kingstown. So right now we don't have plans to open that, but that's a really good question. I'll re-engage. I'll have a do out on that one for you as well. I'll check with DE at my emergency services and see if they have any follow-up or stats on demand signal for Beulah.
Thank you, sir. I see another question here. For businesses looking to do business with Fort Belvoir, what is the process to offer services and get listed as a qualified business? Can you address that?
Yes, if you have the points of contact for those, it's a process that we go through. It's either through AFES or it's through our Directorate of Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. And there's just it's a packet that you have to fill out, and then it'll have to get sort of legal reviewed and all of that. But it's pretty easy. It's a pretty easy process. A little bit bureaucratic, but not too bad. Just kind of fill, like all government things. But basically, if the packet's filled out and then you guys return that, then we can execute the process that way.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Holly, do you see another question there? Or do you have anyone who's raised their hand?
Colonel, thank you so much for your time. Just wondering, overall, are there plans to expand the base further, or is it going to stay the size as it is for the time being? In terms of not physical space, but just personnel on the base.
Yeah, no, not right now. I think what we're working on now is our what's called for just like real property management. So that's just essentially all our infrastructure. We're going through a process now of a 5-year and 10-year planning and projection. And there's no real plan. I mean, there's not a specific plan or an idea to expand either physically or with additional units. Some of the construction that we have going on on post. We do have most of that construction is with existing partners that are on Fort Belvoir. So no specific plans, but quite frankly, I think that's okay. When I mean, at least for me, I underestimated the size and the diversity on Fort Belvoir when I got here in August, and it's a tremendous amount of infrastructure and partners to manage at the Garrison level. Don't take that the wrong way. Like, we love it. We have tremendous partners, but when you look at the economic impact, the number of people we serve, and then the joint community, it's a pretty heavy lift on Fort Belvoir with what we have now.
Thank you.
Colonel Seagraves, another question for you, just in terms of the mental health of families on campus and off. So what is the status, or what do you have planned for the rest of this year in terms of some of the Oktoberfest and other similar events? Can you speak to sports for children and activities such as that?
Yeah, so for the activities, at least through August, I think most of our activities they'll be virtual, or they'll be kind of a recorded or pre-recorded address by some service members. I know we've got that planned for Memorial Day, and then so we're looking ahead to Oktoberfest to see what that's going to look like. I think a lot of that's going to depend on what the local gathering restrictions are and how that progresses over the summer. We're hopeful that we'll be able to execute it yet, but no plans right now, or no plans as of yet to execute that one in person. And then for youth sports, we made the call this year because of our own budget deficits. I don't think we plan to have youth sports this year, but I think like one of the great things about this area is the availability of sports across the Fairfax County. And so we've kind of unfortunately steered a lot of folks to like, hey, some of the local clubs are really good. And so people are, I think, using those for the most part for youth sports. The one that we're looking at in the short term, and I don't know where it's at with public health right now, but is like the pools, for example. We haven't made a call on those, but we're looking to see what we can do for a couple of pools on post. Our housing partner has a pool. We've got a couple of pools, so that's the short-term target that we're moving towards.
Thank you for that. So can you speak to the troop relocation, sir? And will that increase or decrease going forward?
I'm not sure for which
for the installation. In terms of, I had heard personally that there were that the movements were put on hold, that assignments were slowed because of COVID. Has there been any?
Okay. Yeah, no, those are all in motion. Those are in motion. I mean, some of them were, but they're in motion. I mean, people are moving in the Army, as far as a permanent change of station or change of duty station there, people are doing that. So that's it was delayed, but I think for the most part, it's on. We're executing those. They do require, particularly for overseas, some additional COVID testing and vaccination. Well, not vaccination, but COVID testing. Vaccination is still voluntary. So that's kind of where we're at. That's where we're at with that one. I think I got time. I think I got time for one more, and then I think this is scheduled till 9:30, but unfortunately I got to run to my next engagement. If that's okay with the group. Yep.
Yes, sir. That's absolutely fine. Holly, do you have any last question?
I think there was a question about the COVID vaccination site, if that's only for the military and their family members, or if that would be open to the community at large.
So right now it is for military, retirees, military, and dependents. So just for the DoD supported community, if you have particularly if you use Fort Belvoir as your military treatment facility, but even if you don't, it's still available for for military and retirees. The key is that if you get your first vaccine at, like wherever you get your first vaccine, you should get your second vaccine at the same location. And that's kind of how they're that we're addressing that. I can also, in the follow-up, I can send you the websites for anyone that's DoD affiliated to log on to that scheduling system, get scheduled, and then the vaccinations on Fort Belvoir are happening right at the community center, just as you come in Tully Gate.
Well, Colonel Seagraves, we certainly appreciate your time today. Thank you for making yourself available from all of us at the Mount Vernon Lee Chamber of Commerce and guests. I'd like to invite you personally to visit the Fairfax. We truly value that relationship, and we'd love for you to see our beautiful 60-acre campus and visit with some of our residents. So that does conclude today's program. The May morning briefing will be the annual General Assembly report, and we look forward to seeing each and every one of you. We hope you have a great day. Thank you to everyone.